I think real estate professionals should be paying attention to AI because you'll miss out on opportunities if you don't. I think, the world is moving in this direction where AI can assist with a lot of things, eliminate a lot of manual kind of data entry work, make processes smoother, and in some cases increase accuracy of work. There's ways in which generative AI can be very untrustworthy, but analytical AI can actually improve accuracy. And so if you're not paying attention, at least to the trends, tracking how they impact your specific niche within commercial real estate, you're going to be left behind. And I think, I'll put a point on the data specifically, which is that, every investor is only as good as their data. And if your peers are using AI to kind of synthesize all of this data and you're not, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So there are competitive reasons to stay on top of it.
Hi, I'm Adam Gower, founder of gowercrowd.com, where we help real estate syndicators find more investors. Welcome to the easywin AI Real Estate Show, exploring AI's impact on the real estate industry. Each episode offers practical tools, competitive AI strategies, and expert insights. For essential news and updates, visit easywin.ai and sign up for our free newsletter with actionable how-tos like how I added hours to my day by creating this clone of me you're watching and listening to right now. easywin.ai, the only newsletter you need on real estate and AI. All right, now over to the real me. I tell you what, it's going to take me a while to get used to having an avatar of me making the introductions. But anyway. Right, so now I don't need to say anything other than to introduce today's guest. This is Hannah Miet, who is, I actually wrote down a journalist at ULI, Urban Land Institute, which isn't quite accurate. So in fact, I'm going to read what she has on her LinkedIn profile. Read something like this. I help commercial real estate and prop tech leaders cut through the chatter and grow their businesses by marketing their expertise through messaging, positioning, content marketing, and 10 years of industry experience. And she is a top content strategy voice. So that's Hannah Miet. But she wrote an article, very interesting article, for the Urban Land Institute that discusses the challenges of or the opportunities that come to commercial real estate through the consolidation of data and effective use of that data. It really is mind-blowing what the opportunities are. You're going to be hearing all about it today, but also about the challenges that what goes in, if garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. So how do you actually consolidate the right kind of data to make sense of what there is and to get good outputs? Hannah is very knowledgeable. She is a fairly heavy user of AI. You're going to hear some really practical applications that you can actually use, as well as getting some really big picture ideas about how your world as a commercial real estate investor, professional is changing and how it's changing very, very rapidly. Enough of that. Hannah Miet, here she is. Let's get on with it. Hannah, thanks so much for joining me. While we were chatting, just as we got started then, I confessed to you my obsession with AI. I'm not even sure I should say that publicly, but it's because we appear to have the same view of what's going to happen to real estate, that it is going to impact real estate more quickly and more profoundly than anything else in the history of real estate, even the invention of elevators, maybe. Beyond even that, so we could go super high. Tell me why you agree with me on that idea. Let's start that.
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with caveats. I think, it's like I agree that AI is absolutely going to transform real estate. And I think the hype around generative AI has given more funding and it's kind of given a boost to the analytical traditional AI that can be used for helping with real estate investment decisions. And that AI is, at least from an investment standpoint, really growing and developing. And so I think that's going to dramatically change the investment landscape.
Okay, so we talked about two things in kind of reverse chronological order. Generative AI, which is where the world is going to head, and everything's just going to go really wacky,
Yeah.
right, relative to what it is today. But the step before that, as we move incrementally in this world, is helping. Now, what was the term used exactly? Helping people to do what with deals? Like just
So basically, generative AI, I would describe as creating net new content. So something doesn't exist, you give AI a prompt. This is the chat GPT, even Jasper. There's so many different tools that do this. And then analytical AI is the AI that's existed for much longer. It's also called traditional AI. And basically, that is the number crunching data analysis AI. So that's where the real estate investment use case comes in is, can this AI crunch all this data and help make my investment decision-making process easier? It's not going to eliminate, the high-level decision makers from the table, but it can queue up when trained really well on data that's standardized. It can queue up like, hey, these are 5 deals you should consider based on your parameters.
right. And we okay. And the article in ULI was kind of around the idea of bad data and the challenges of actually perfecting that. But to what extent are you seeing AI being used to identify real estate? Can you describe some actual use cases? Well, I mean, you don't name names. It'd be wonderful if you did.
Yeah.
But you don't have to. But how is it being used actually today?
Yeah, so it's being used in a variety of ways. I would say the most common, it kind of cuts across industries, is like for project management, and more so the kinds of things that you can automate. That's the generative side. Is like, can I make this process of submitting proposals smoother through generative AI, that kind of thing. If it's a development, can I have like the way that the contracts work? There's a company called Northspire, I believe, that deals with like the development process. And I think that if I'm remembering correctly, that's an AI tool. And then what was the second part of your question?
Right. The nice thing that you said was that's like this kind of the holy grail is
Yeah.
to be able to go onto your computer and say, I want to buy the best undervalued multifamily apartment deal
Yes.
in this zip code. Who should I call? Like, who's the owner that is most likely to sell?
Yes.
And what's
yes.
their email address and phone number?
Yeah. Right. So in the ULI article, I talked to Adir Levitas, who's the CEO of FarrowPoint, it's an industrial last mile specific investment manager. And basically, they started training their analytical AI models around the time of the pandemic, so about 4 years ago now. Really specifically on, like, they focus on warehouses. And an interesting thing there is, like, warehouses are more standard. This didn't make the article, but Adir was explaining to me, like, these warehouses are more standard than your typical real estate property. It's a box. And so they created a rent predictor model, and they trained it, and basically to train something, you need to standardize all of the data. So they have an R&D team of, I think it's like 15% or more of their total company size. And it's data folks, it's tech folks. And so that just shows you, like, the people that are actually, and so they are using this tool because rent, obviously, for industrial is kind of a deciding factor in decisions. They're using it as basically an advisor to make decisions faster. And they even put in an initial offer on a deal without traveling to the site, and based on getting their information from their model. And then they sent, of course, people on the ground to look at the site, but it was like they got to put in that initial offer without even being there based on their model. but I think they've put a lot of work into it. And so I think, and specifically for their data, like for the data that applies to industrial, figuring out, like, for example, does ceiling height matter to rent? Like, what are the actual parameters that really truly affect rent? And that way, training the AI to predict that.
Okay, so that is brilliant. It's funny you should say that exact example. So I just long story, and I'll keep it short now, but I just actually invested in some industrial real estate, and parts of the analysis that I wanted to conduct in order to be able to teach other investors how to look at real estate was, all right, all these different variables, and there aren't that many in industrial: ceiling height, door height, whatever. There's like a few things here, and size. There's a few things. How much do those actually, if you can dial those in, surely you can get to a very precise, this is what it should be renting for number. So it's interesting that they're doing that. Let me ask you a question though. So you described Faro, I got it written, Faro Point, right? And Dear Levitas over there as having built something, OMG, right? Most real estate folk build real estate. They don't think about hiring 15 engineers. Like, where would you even start, like, doing that? It's but like, why bother? So there are two types of use cases today, and this being May, almost June 2024, by July, it'll be all out of date, as you well know. But as of today, two use cases. One is you can build stuff yourself,
yes,
if you have that but the other is to use applications. You could just use some of the LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude, etc. Or you can use applications, I call them wrappers, whatever you want to call them, that other people have built. To what extent are you seeing those being adopted or growing for real estate specifically, if you are at all?
I was looking into, like, is there one tool that people in real estate are using that, is a third party tool? And I didn't really find consistency there. There's some, also a lot of confusion around, a lot of tools are claiming to be AI tools, and they may have one tiny component that's AI, and the rest is, just a regular algorithm.
Data science. So what is the distinguishing feature, Hannah?
That's actually a good question. I think that AI is trained, like, basically it depends on what type of AI you're looking at. AI that is analytical is trained using data. So it's, I guess, similar. I'm not sure enough. I don't know if I know enough about data science to know how to, it's like, I feel like I know more about AI than data science itself. So maybe that doesn't distinguish it. But basically, I think the training process is different, is the broad strokes, I think, how it differs.
And also how you communicate with it, though, also, exactly. Right? I think just here we are. I don't know. You're obviously very knowledgeable about this. I feel like, the blind over here, but I think that when you put a query into data science, you actually have to code it. Yes. Whereas with AI, you can chat with it. You can actually 100%. Talk to it. It's a very different kind of interaction. What actually sits behind there, it's some vector database instead of a regular, whatever. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's the way that it performs and the way you interact with it, perhaps, that makes the difference. Wildly guessing.
And there's so basically JLL was kind of an interesting case, because they basically, I'm trying to make sure I remember this correctly, but basically they have a venture capital fund for prop tech, and they invested in Skyline AI, in an investment management platform that's run by AI, and then they basically acquired it and combined their own quants, like their capital markets quants, with that database. So basically, like, there's a lot of, I would say it's all happening. People are using third-party platforms, or they're acquiring platforms if they're bigger players, but they're also building their own. And there's benefits and risks associated with building your own. Like you said, it takes a lot of effort, and not a lot of people in real estate know where to start with something like that. So that's why you get someone like an Dear Levitas, who's like not a tech guy himself, but is very tech savvy enough to know, I need to build this team. Doris is the name of their CTO, like I need to give her a lot of leadership and all of that, just like letting her steer certain things. It's kind of it's cultural too, having the mindset to be like, I'm going to invest in tech so that so that I have an edge against other investors.
I spoke to Vadim Kleiner at Smartland in actually Miami and Cleveland. They have offices in both. He's very tech savvy. He's a real estate guy. He's raising 250 million for his new fund. I was listening to, I don't know, we went into some details on the interview, and that's also going to be part of the podcast.
Oh, great.
And when we finished and got offline, I said to him, Vadim, why are you raising money for real estate anymore? Right? This is why don't you? I mean, these tools that he's built, that's like a gold mine. Why don't you just sell that instead? And to my surprise, he hesitated. I shouldn't tell you this, I suppose. He hesitated to think about the answer. Actually, yeah, so, it's that kind of world that we're in.
Yeah.
But, even at DealPath, sorry, not DealPath. Yeah, is it DealPath you were mentioning?
Yes.
Oh, no, sorry, Farrapoint. Yeah. That tool, you build that, refine it close enough, there's more money to be made there potentially than even in buying a building and having to deal with tenants. But the big challenge is data, isn't it? I mean, that was kind of the core.
Yes.
And one of the challenges, and this is interesting, this is something we can wrap our heads around, that sponsors and investors do use a lot of data sources. You go to CoStar, you go here, you go there, you pull this, you pull that, you try and do your analytics, right? You run analysis on a site and on a location and where's potential. A lot of human work behind it. So what is the process of both consolidating that, and then when you do the challenge of, that was the whole point of your article, wasn't it? Bad data. Yeah. So to talk about that a little bit, what the issues are with that.
Basically, so analytical AI is trained on data, and in order to train it, you need to normalize the data, which is basically like a process of removing anything that's unstructured, anything that's redundant, or anything that's low integrity. And since commercial real estate doesn't have, a set data standard in the US or elsewhere, but especially in the US, I think we probably have even less than some other areas. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because it prevents in some ways mass AI adoption on the investment side, since it is so dependent on the standardized data to train the models. But it also, it's like every investment manager is only as good as their data. Some people have data from 50 different sources, big companies that they use to make decisions, and sometimes their edge over other people is that they have one data source that the other person doesn't have. So if you take the time to consolidate a lot of data and standardize it and train models on it for your specific investment purpose, it has a lot of promise. It's just a lot of work. And so it's kind of like right now, there isn't a third-party tool that's like a one and done for using AI for investment. There's a lot of platforms that serve different needs and have AI components. But because there's not that, it's kind of like the question that investment managers and investors, developers should be thinking about is like, is it worth it for me? Do I want to be a pioneer and really start developing something that's going to take years to show fruit in terms of really helping my investment processes and speeding them up? Or do I want to wait until there is some kind of tool that, is maybe broader? But again, it's like the data has to be there available.
There's another option. And the other option is adoption.
Yeah.
This is the whole essence of what I'm trying to do is take small steps. You don't have to go immediately to hiring 15 engineers, data engineers, all in their mid-20s, right? Who come in and do whatever. You don't have to go that step in order to be able to make progress in this new world. You can take very small steps to add to your repertoire and test things and try things just to see how they work. And again, it's kind of the essence of what I'm doing here with easywin.ai is to say, hey, look, Don't be frightened about it. Here, try this. Look at how easy it is, actually. And then you'll start to become more aware of the world around you. And when something does materialize, be able to jump on it because you're expecting it and you're acclimatized to this new world. By the way, there is somebody that I have spoken to. So that's why I'm looking over here. Don't be distracted when I look away. I'm totally focused and listening to every word. A fellow's called LD Salmonson. He's at a shop called Cherry. Cherre. And I spoke to, he wanted to talk to me before he would agree to coming on the podcast. I don't know, like, whatever, I'll do that. And anyway, he talked to me in a language that was really difficult to understand because he's more of a tech guy. But what he's doing is he is pulling through one pipe all of these disparate data sources, doing exactly what you just described as the big challenge. So grabbing these 40 different sources, wherever they come from, right? And there are so many from TREP or, wherever they are, just dozens and dozens of different sources. What's the word is, I use the word consolidating, but normalizing was the word you said. And then on the other side of it is an interface that you can now communicate with. This is what I think he's doing. Just one source, so one screen, and it gives you everything all in one place. And that seems to be, that's what his goal is. But so what else did you also talked about some other platforms, didn't you? When we talk about platforms.
Yeah. Let me just pull up the article because I wanted to.
DealPath was one of them.
Yeah. So DealPath, basically, they incorporated traditional, like this analytical kind of AI into their platform in 2020. And basically, as generative AI advanced, they layered in generative AI to the platform. So it now has both like the analytical investment, number crunching AI, and the generative AI components. And basically, it can extract, like, at the most basic level, AI is great at data extraction. And I think people discount how important that is in commercial real estate, where like you have a stack of OMs on your desk and there's a person that goes through all of those. And, even just converting those into text is
you think about the process, mind-blowing, isn't it?
It really is.
First convert it into Word.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then run a search.
And it's all, it's all like there's Excel spreadsheets, there's papers, there's all of this stuff. And so basically, their DealPath system can extract anything, Excel files, like paper flyers, more accurately than humans can. And that's kind of like a theme that came up in a lot of my interviews for the ULI story, was just that it's like you want to focus on the areas where AI can do things better than humans. Like Andrea Yang, who I interviewed, she's like a go-to-market consultant for prop tech companies. And she basically said, like, the human eye can look around a site, a development site, and know instantly, like, this is right for me, this is not right for me. Training AI to be able to do even a smidgen of that, of what the human eye does, is so laborious and expensive. Whereas if you train AI to do something that humans are not very good at, like we can't focus well to extract data from one source, like that kind of stuff comes with a lot of error. That's where AI can be really helpful. So it's kind of wise if companies are considering investing in AI to think about, like, first of all, learn like what's hard for AI to do versus easy for AI to do with the current technology. And then also, like, what is basically, how much is it going to take to get AI to where a human is? And can AI exceed that in terms of accuracy? And with a lot of these analytical models, it can exceed humans in terms of accuracy once it's really well trained. It just takes a long time.
Have you ever read The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley?
I haven't.
For some reason, it made me think of it. So you're obviously way too young to have been around when The Doors, the band, came out. But the Doors. Okay, so they were actually named after the Doors of Perception.
Cool.
Aldous Huxley had this theory. It's a really good book. He had this theory that the human senses actually, the five senses are not. They don't let information in. They function to close off too much information from overpopulating our brains. He calls them doors, the doors of perception.
Wow.
And he actually unlocked the doors with LSD. That was his whole thing.
I love that.
So that's how he came to this idea. This is how you open the doors to perception. Not recommending anybody does this at home or anything like that. I'm just referring to a book. But so actually, it's an interesting question. So let me kind of approach it from a slightly different angle, Hannah, if you don't mind. So you're talking about it hard for AI, but let's talk about what makes it hard for people. And for I mean, you wrote for the Real Deal. I hope it's okay that I mention that.
Of
so
course,
you know this industry. You know this industry. You know how to communicate, and you know who the audience is. This is exactly the same as mine. So what makes it difficult for real estate professionals, do you think, today to see AI or to contextualize it in the worlds, their busy worlds today? And what would make it easier for them?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that basically it's somewhat of an adoption issue. It's somewhat around, it's hard because there isn't like a one solution platform for every real estate need. It's an emerging technology, especially in real estate, that is pretty slow to adopt most technologies. So it's a bit fragmented right now. I would say prop tech as a whole is very fragmented, where you have a lot of I do a lot of work in prop tech, and there's so much exciting things happening, but they're often like, you'll have, if you look at your major investment companies, 5 of them will be on one platform, 10 of them will be on another. There's not critical mass. So I think knowing where to start is the hardest problem for companies, especially if they're not ready to make an investment like Fairpoint did in developing their own. It's just sort of like you have the consumer facing products that a lot of people are playing with, like ChatGPT, but they don't really know where to start when it comes to more real estate specific use cases.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's over. I mean, there are hundreds of ways that you could start. So where do you start? And even if you choose one, how do you start?
Right.
I mean, it's just the simple default of going to ChatGPT, probably the most famous,
right,
and extracting something of actual, tangible, practical use right now is not easy, actually.
No, it's not easy. And I think that's kind of, if you go in knowing that even if you're using ChatGPT, you're going to have to learn how to write those commands to get the best results out of ChatGPT. And very likely, this is my experience, you're going to get more and more specific with your prompts as you go. It's going to learn about you. There's a lot of different ways, especially if you're using, I have a tool that's specific to writing and stuff like that. And it is 0% something that I would ever take and just publish what it says. But sometimes if I want to get thoughts going, I'll use it. And it's learning my brand. It's learning things about, the way that I talk and communicate, that it tries to replicate. It's not at all perfect, but it's the more I use it, the better it gets. And so I think if you go in knowing, the more you train any model, whether it's third party or it's something that you individually as a user are training, it's going to get better, but you do have to put that time investment in. You can't go in expecting to have great results right away.
I've started to use, I just mentioned this, I think, before we started. I've started to use ChatGPT and some of the other LLMs, large language models, that as as an assistant.
Yeah.
How do I do this? Or can you check this? Is my wording seems a little aggressive? Can I change, modify or something? And it's brilliant, actually. It's like having a helper there all the time, suddenly realizing instead of, it's very useful. I'll tell you something really wacky that happened the other day. That I put in a query and it gave me an answer. And you know what it said at the end, Hannah? Blew my mind. I should have saved it. I'm glad I did take a screenshot. It actually said, here's the answer to your question. And don't forget about your new podcast series. Maybe this would work well for that.
Wow.
Wow, right? Wow. Check these out as well. I mean, it has a memory.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
That's the thing. It's like, I think people that are looking at it from a user standpoint don't think of the word training, because they think of training as like the technical process, which it is. That is a process, but there's also the process of you as a user training it to your specific needs, which is really just using it. It's using it, it learns as you use it, as you know, and there's definitely a lot of people who have concerns about data privacy and all of that.
That's the next thing. It made me, just as we were talking right now, it made me think of 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Right, where he said, what does he say? I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm sorry, Bob, I can't do that. It's like, wait a minute. Just starts to, sorry, I can't do that. You know that's coming. Hannah, so let's, what a fascinating conversation. Let's revisit in some months, because in a few months, you know what, the world's going to look very, very different. But let me finish with 3 questions. I'm going to ask you 3 rapid fire questions, if you don't mind. Yes. So help me. My first question is, what are your thoughts on why real estate? It's a bit of a leading question, so I'm going to excuse it. You're the first person I've asked this of. But why? What are your thoughts on why real estate professionals should be paying attention to AI?
Yeah. I think real estate professionals should be paying attention to AI because you'll miss out on opportunities if you don't. I think, you know, the world is moving in this direction where AI can assist with a lot of things, eliminate a lot of manual kind of data entry work, make processes smoother, and in some cases increase accuracy of work. You know, there's ways in which generative AI can be very untrustworthy, but analytical AI can actually improve accuracy. And so if you're not paying attention, at least to the trends, tracking how they impact your specific niche within commercial real estate, you're going to be left behind. And I think, like, I'll put a point on the data specifically, which is that, like, you know, every investor is only as good as their data. And if your peers are using AI to kind of synthesize all of this data and you're not, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So there are competitive reasons to stay on top of it.
Thank you. Second question of my last 3. How do you, Hannah, how do you use AI on a daily basis?
So you know, I'm a content and brand marketing professional. And so basically I use AI, I would say, every day in designing. Like, I have Canva, which has some AI components. They're not perfect, but I'm playing with them and I'm excited about, like, as they improve, how they'll work.
Canva is a graphics production app.
Exactly. Every time I send out a proposal to a client, every time I'm sending, really any materials that come from my business whatsoever are created in Canva. I have like a business subscription, and some of those, even just when I search for a template, I'm typing in very specific terms that are a prompt for the AI to find the right or create the right template for me for that project. So if I type in like bright blue proposal with, you know, these 3 elements, it'll sort through and either create or link me to an existing template.
Okay, interesting. So, so the first spot that you answered when I said how do you use it is Canva, is it? Not you use any of the LLMs to help you in any way?
So I use Jasper AI, which is primarily like a writing tool for really anything. What I like about it is that you can input your brand voice into it. which as a brand marketer is like, I can do that for every single one of my clients. Input enough, it's like a knowledge base where you can input, this is what this company is an expert in. And since I do thought leadership focused marketing, it's kind of perfect for that. I will say I really use it more as a brainstorming tool and as kind of like a creative playing tool. I do a lot of messaging and positioning projects, which are like basically as specific as language can get. You're trying to find, positioning is like the one half sentence that shows how this company is different from all other companies. And so it's like, sitting on my own, brainstorming and writing versus kind of throwing something at AI, getting something back, going, oh, wait, maybe I can use this specific word that's slightly different than what I entered. And does that change? Like, does that make this little puzzle of positioning work? I use it for that. I use it to sometimes like structure. I was in the process of hiring an assistant for my business, and I had Jasper write my job description, and then I just edited it. And it was actually very helpful because I haven't hired an assistant before. I've hired like more on a freelance basis, not, regular assistant. So there was things I didn't think of, but that should have been in there that it included. And then of course there were things I had to like tailor to my specific needs, but
Yeah, it's really interesting, as you say. It's easier to iterate something than it is to create something, right? Right.
Yes. Like I'm not currently worried about it replacing me. And I do think that like we don't know what the future holds. Right now, AI cannot be strategic. I haven't seen it work for anything strategy related, which is most of what I do is kind of in that like marketing and brand strategy category. But I do find it like to be an excellent brainstorming partner and to offer up a structure for something. Sometimes, I'll also feed it documents and say like, what is some way that I might organize all of this information? Like have it synthesize 3 interviews, say, and like, can you recommend, and it's faulty, but sometimes it gives me enough that then I can see what I want the outline to be. Like I'm going to take one part of it, I'm going to remove this sort of extraneous, like it's as long as like I think as long as you're a person who understands writing, you can understand like writing and editing, you can understand what needs to stay and what is just very generic and should go, like the way it restates, its conclusion in this very like English essays from 20 years ago kind of way that like I think schools are now teaching out of people to get them to be stronger writers and more direct communicators. It has the very indirect style of your, but it's if you know enough to be a good editor of that work, it can be very helpful. It can get you out of being stuck in your brain and kind of more into an almost collaborative environment.
It's like a sounding board.
Exactly.
All right, let me ask you the last question then, even though I want to ask a bunch of others and make a load of comments about what you just said. Any easy wins? That's the name of the podcast, Easy Win AI. Any easy wins for listeners? Something that as we wrap up, they could just, oh, that's kind of cool, and just try. It's a tough question to ask, maybe not. Like something they could try right now that would advance them, even just incrementally a little bit in their understanding and use of AI.
I want to get the correct name of this before I share it. It's probably going to be an unexpected one, but I just started using it and I just have to look up the name. Let me see. I think this is more just like to show people that it's crazy what it can do.
Take your time and find it. Yeah, I'll put like a drum roll over the
amazing
over the silence, and then a cymbals crash.
I love that.
When you're ready with it.
Okay, so it's called Secta Labs.
How do you spell that?
SECTA, and then the word lab, like laboratory. It is a headshot generator. So basically, you need to have some quality headshots in order to use it, but It's very cheap right now. Like you pay like, I think it's like a $29 one-time fee. And basically you upload like 100 photos of yourself and it will generate hundreds of headshots based on those photos. And look, there's some that look a little weird, but there's some that are creepily accurate. And so like if you have a website or you have, you know, like these demands that's like you're not going to do 5 photo shoots for, but you want there to be differentiation in your headshots, it can like even put different clothes on you. It can do all of this stuff. So I think in terms of the visual AI, that is one of the most exciting, scary, all of the things, examples that I've seen.
I'm so happy that you mentioned that. Actually, Pam on my team just sent me a bunch of, she used a different platform, sent me a bunch, like dozens and dozens of rendered pictures. Like you say, some of them are a little bit weird, but some of them are really good. I was looking at them and I thought, my reaction to it was these are all the lives I didn't live.
Yes. It had me as like an Egyptian princess. I was like, okay, I'm not going to use this for anything, but that's awesome. I now know what I look like as an Egyptian princess.
Yeah, it's exactly that's right. Oh my goodness. Hannah, how's your last name pronounced? Is it Miet?
Miet. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. No one ever pronounces it correctly, but yeah, it's Miet.
Hannah Miet, what an enormous pleasure meeting you. Thanks so much for joining me
So
on the show
lovely
today.
to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, that was Hannah Miet. Thank you so much indeed for joining me, Hannah. It was a real pleasure to meet you. I look forward to continuing our conversation. You know, these kinds of things in the world of AI are changing daily. Almost like, what time is it? Is it still current even now? It's a real pleasure talking to you. And thank you also very much indeed, dear viewers, for tuning in, watching this episode. If you have not already signed up to get the accompanying newsletter to this podcast series, please do so at easywin.ai. It is the only newsletter that you will ever need on the intersection of AI and real estate. And we're going to be putting out all kinds of how-tos and guides and really easy win marketing solutions for you across the board, highly educational, news updates, what's going on, how's the world of real estate being affected by AI. It is so cool, this stuff. So thank you anyway for joining me. Thank you again, Hannah. It was a real pleasure meeting you. Thank you, dear viewers. And until next episode, this is Adam Gower signing off.